We're going to open the meeting of the Marin Local Agency Coordination Commission on Thursday, August 10th, 2017. Rachel, can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Rodon,
Present.
Chair Blanchard,
Here.
Commissioner Connolly,
Here.
Commissioner Murray,
Here.
Commissioner McEntee,
Here.
Commissioner Baker,
Here.
alternate Commissioner Skelton,
Here.
alternate Commissioner Matt Brown,
Here.
and please let the record reflect the alternate Commissioner Caius,
Here.
and then please let the record reflect alternate Commissioner Arnold and Commissioner Vice Chair Condon is absent.
Well, since Commissioner Condon is not here, Matt, could you take the, or Spy, you can still stay there.
Sure.
Okay.
You get elevated up from the kids' table.
That's right.
Your day will come.
I've yet to have that happen.
Yeah, well, that's kind of your performance report.
You're too responsible, you guys.
Okay, before we look at the agenda, I just wanted to announce, as a number of you may know, the former public member, alternate Chris Burdick, had problems with his knees, both tendons were pulled, and he had an operation which was not successful. And so he is going to have another operation and refer to another doctor. But I thought, since Chris has been a member for so long and was close to many of you, we pass this card around. He, and if you please sign it, he really liked the comments that the commissioners sent. Some of you dropped by to see him, and that was a real plus for him. So, Lou, I'm going to start there, and Matt, if you could pass it over, that would be great. Okay, I'll entertain any suggested changes to the agenda, and if not, we'll go directly to our open time.
Just quickly on staff, and if we could just put on the radar maybe a 5-minute break as we transition from item 20 to 21.
Okay?
That'll be the big rollout of the iPads.
All right,
Thank you.
will do. So this is our open time, the time that we set aside on our agenda for members of the public to address the commission on matters that we aren't going to discuss in hearing today. If you would like to do so, the public can address the commission if we go left turn in the microphone at the end of the room there. Seeing no one interested, I'm going to move to the consent calendar. We have a number of items on the consent calendar, 14 as a matter of fact. And so if anyone has any item that they'd like to discuss or ask questions on, let's find out now. We'll pull them out, and then we'll just address them, and then we'll go back and move the consent calendar. I have a couple myself.
Pull item 12.
12.
The new computer, just for a further explanation.
Okay.
I'd like to pull items 4 and 5.
Okay, only as seated in the position. But you might. Craig, did you have one?
Actually, it's 12 also.
12. Well, I'll entertain a motion. Now that you've been put in your place.
Jeff, I wonder if Matt shouldn't sit over there just so it's not confusing, since you just mentioned that, you know, what alternates and not to make you move, I'm sorry, Matt, just for the members of the audience to not be confused.
Okay.
Just, I'm sorry for the inconvenience, I just think it would be better.
Yeah, you're promoted up, you can't
Yeah.
hang out with us, whatever, over here.
Yeah. And bring,
Assume your appropriate position.
please bring your card, the card with you so you can pass it to this one.
Yeah, it makes it convenient for that.
There you go.
Okay, so we've got two people who like 12 pulled. I have a couple of
4, 5, and 12.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent calendar minus at this time, items 4, 5, and 12. All commissioners in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any commissioner abstaining, any commissioner objecting, motion passes. Damian and Craig, in that order, your comments.
This item looks like caught a few of our attention in that would love to have further explanation of the thinking behind the need and, you know, the number of new Apple computers on the table, so.
Do you want me to go ahead on? Get all the
Yeah,
questions out?
if Craig has a similar question, maybe he could ask.
Yeah, so basically, Lou, myself, Carla, we're on the technical website committee, so and it is kind of Apple system versus how that was
Sure.
chosen, if there's,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and so, and obviously, since there's so much interest, I erred in putting this on consent, so I fully acknowledge that right off the bat. But as we try to articulate in the staff report, so right now, the commission has 3 workstations, okay? Each workstation has an assigned computer. It happens to be a PC. It just so happens, for circumstances that we have noted in the report, within the next 12, 60 months, all 3 need to be replaced, okay? Add to that, we assume the commission later today may authorize a 4th position at LAFCO that will ultimately need its own workstation computer. So we're looking at this need to bring in 4 new computers in a relatively small time period. In the course of looking at our options, staff looked at going back into the PC world and specifically Toshiba, which is the majority computer right now, PC computer. It just so happened Toshiba's seem to be on their last breath, right? They're not taking any more direct orders, and they're certainly not accepting any more warranty coverage. So that began us to look at, okay, if we're going to start all over, what do we think is really going to work for LAFCO? Given what we do, and again, we're kind of an odd governmental entity, we don't fix roads, we don't build buildings, but what we do is produce reports that increasingly rely on graphics to kind of convey immediately information to the general public. So our thinking is, relative to the operating system, Apple's would be a superior choice, just on that basis alone. Add to this dynamic, and this is somewhat subjective, but I'll offer it up. Your business model in terms of staff recruitment is to bring in relatively young people right out of college, get a couple of years of experience, and then they are off to bigger and better things. Well, as we experienced recently, when you are recruiting new students these days, PCs are not on their mind. They're increasingly more Apple-oriented. So our thinking here is, yeah, it's an additional cost, about 20% more than going down a PC road, but it will pay dividends for the commission, not only in terms of the work product, but also recruiting and retaining employees based on our business model. I can go into more detail about how the costs got broken into, if there's interest there, but that's really how the decision-making came into play.
so just a few concerns. I've seen, for instance, situations where the Apple doesn't quite speak with the PC. There's some translation issues on it. And then on the benefit side, I have also heard that, and maybe Luke could speak to this, not as much malware issues with the Apple operating system. So again, for very limited staff and really no IT backup, that does seem to be a benefit besides the attraction to younger employees.
Yeah, okay, so on the cost side, so there's the upfront investment of about $21,000, which for timing purposes, we actually can cover for the most part through surplus funds in our salaries and benefits because there's this delay in bringing in a new employee. Perhaps the cost, and I know it caught Commissioner Skelton's attention, is the $7,000 that we're proposing for annual. And I apologize for why this keeps cutting in and out on me, but our thinking there is or at least the first year, for reasons that you mentioned, Commissioner Murray. We're not IT experts. We don't have an in-house IT person. Let's just pre-fund that $7,000 in knowing that we're going to have someone on call 24 hours a day for that first year. And it basically works out to 5 hours a month. And at the end of that year, the commission can decide, hey, does a premium support service contract make sense? Or maybe at that point, all the kinks have been worked out and we can revert to a kind of an hourly as-need basis. So that was also part of the thinking in bringing this item to you.
If you were to just go with the PC.
So there's basically a 25% difference. Apple definitely is a higher markup, although, as Commissioner Murray noted, there are some savings. For example, the malware protection on Apples are better. We are able to utilize our recent investment in our Dell server. It is compatible. So for 20% more, 20 and 25% more, you're getting the benefit of better operating system, a better security system. Plus, I think you do have a real recruitment advantage going forward by having Apple.
Based on the applicability to what you do.
Yeah, specific to LAFCO and its think tank operations, where we're just producing written reports, graphics. We're not, using CAD or things of that nature.
My feeling is, and this is horribly more expensive than the other one, we're essentially saying, look, tell us the computers you need to do your job. And you make the decision what works and what doesn't work. And this is what you and the technical committee have come up with, right?
Well, no, I have to apologize. So in this case, I did not reach out to the technical committee just on the basis that getting committees have been challenging, and we do have this fourth employee coming hopefully sooner than later. But if there is a desire to hit pause, we can certainly do that.
At the risk of revealing my age, I can tell you that I've been making my career in computers since 1972. From a systems programmer to a president of a technology company. And I prefer a PC myself personally, but Keen is absolutely right. If you want to recruit people, if you want to do things that are graphic intensive, then the state of the art today is using Apple Mac products. So I would support this completely. Had you drawn the technology committee into session, I would have supported it completely. So it's the right thing to do in my view.
Okay, any more comments by the commissioners on this matter? Yes.
I'd support Lou's endorsement of the policy. The one change that I'd like to field to the commissioners is reevaluating the support program after a year to figure out whether or not the sort of 24-hour intense support program is warranted, necessary, or there may be a more cost-effective way to provide the necessary support for staff. So bring it back after a year, find out if the $7,000 is worthwhile and if there may be alternative or competitive bids out there.
That seems,
sensible.
yeah, very reasonable. In a former life, when I actually used to work, my office converted from a total PC to a Macintosh. It was the only one in the state of California that the Office of Industrial Technology, whatever it was, authorized. And one of the benefits was we never had any problems with our computer. We didn't need to have a technical department. And it worked pretty seamlessly with the graphics that we did, which was, and the putting together our own reports like ours now. So that's just my experience, and it worked. Okay, I had comments on 4 and 5, and those comments are only that these seem to be reoccurring projects.
Should we approve 12 for?
Sure, we can. Let's have a motion from somebody. Dennis, do you want to add that motion on to your motion of the others? Yeah.
I'll second.
The motion is second to approve the new computer networking system with the proviso that at the end of a year, come back to analyze whether or not the onboard technician is required, whatever that person will be a troubleshooter. Okay. All those commissioners in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any commissioner opposed? Any commissioner abstaining? Motion passes. Mine is quick. As I said, I noticed there are two items that kind of reoccur, come back to us all the time, seeking a time extension. And I know this takes time of staff, and so therefore I would rather see us make sure that everything is complete in an application before it comes to the commission, so these don't come back. Often we have 2 or 3 per meeting. And if we can eliminate that, I think that that would be beneficial. That's just a comment, and no motion needs to be made on it. Yes?
I'd like to make a couple comments about 4 and 5, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I took notice of these two, although I wasn't a commissioner at the time. I noticed that both of them were approved, I think, August 13th, 2015. Yet there are 2 different sort of extension standards that are being applied to them. I know that each application is unique. In this case, I'd actually like to open up a discussion to apply potentially the same extension standard to each of these and try and strike a balance somewhere in the middle of 4 to 6 months for each of them to sort it out. And I say sort it out because although I don't have the background for these applications, it sounds like these are solution-oriented problems that the applicants or owners are struggling to address, and that whether it's engineering or a cost-benefit analysis for them in working with a neighbor, they should be properly motivated to effectively invest their entitlement. In this instance, it seems like Commissioner Blanchfield's observation is correct that it's becoming a drain on staff resources. These items have come back time and time again, even if it's only bringing it to the commission for a brief discussion, and they're not paying new application fees or anything like that. They're just sort of kicking the can down the road. I'm not aware of a Marin LAFCO policy, but maybe for a separate discussion, we should start to think about whether there should be, one automatic, ministerial extension, and then limiting it to, a certain number of extensions at the discretion of the executive officer or the commission. Otherwise, the way that these 2 applications read, it seems like if there's some sort of difficulty, the problem will just continue to get perpetuated and it'll continue to be a drain on staff time and resources. So I would, for this consent calendar items 4 and 5, like to modify it to, I'd say, a 6-month extension. I think that's a reasonable period of time, considering they were approved 2 years ago. And if they're not motivated by one means or another after 2.5 full years, then maybe that entitlement should lapse and they should have to reapply.
Ian, can you tell us your thinking about the 2 different time periods? I know these were a problem.
Yeah, and so, and Commissioner Skelton is correct. We don't have policies on how to deal with time extensions. And in the past, they really haven't been an issue for LAFCO, so it hasn't been on our radar. So, staff has struggled a bit on trying to create some consistency here. The reason why we made a distinction with item 4, we're recommending a full year, versus number 5, we're saying 2 months. With respect to item 4, the Tamales boundary change, staff had a role, I think has a role in how those conditions came about, and specifically tying the applicant to get an easement with his neighbor to connect to the sewer line. I think Chair Blanchfield mentioned, had we done a better job up front, we could have, avoided tying a condition to a third party. But here we are, we're having trouble with that third party who's had a change of thinking over the last few years about compensation. So there's that issue. With respect to number 5, we just find ourselves in watching stalemate between Standard Fell Sanitation and the applicant about what is an appropriate lateral connection. And the reason why we said 2 months is, let's incentivize monetarily someone budging, because no one's budging right now. If the suggestion is from the commission, our preference is 6 months and that's it, well then you're sending us a signal that admittedly we could benefit from, because under policy we don't have a signal from you about where your threshold is with respect to wrapping these things up. As an alternative and or as a supplement, we certainly can go to the policy committee with some language and come back to you at your next meeting to help kind of guide these going forward. I hope this doesn't become a reoccurring issue, but history suggests with these 2 proposals, and odd that they were approved at the same time, it just happened to be, we are struggling a bit. So I would stand by the recommendation that staff provided. It's based on practice, but if you want to go the route of 6 months, it's very easy for staff to convey to the applicants, the commission has spoken, and this is their preference going forward.
Commissioner Adoni and Commissioner Atkins. T.
Thank you. I think that it's probably more complicated than we're trying to decide it is, especially in Tamales. They haven't even submitted anything to the county, so I know the 1 year doesn't really mean anything to them, and I know they have other issues like the easement issue. So I prefer to maybe look at developing a policy around renewals. I think we should collect some cost recovery on anything like this, so that at least we're left some equal at the end. But I do feel like the policy should be the first place, and I'm a little uncomfortable with the 2 months, given that we don't have a policy and we look some really random in those decisions. So, if 6 months would settle tonight for both of them, with the understanding that probably Tamales is going to be back. But at that point, we could have a policy about it and cost recovery. So that would be my suggestion.
So as far as what we do tonight, we go as proposed, or
I'm suggesting we do them both equally, whatever that means.
equally the 6
So that
months?
we don't treat them differently.
Okay. And in the interim, we look at coming up with a comprehensive extension policy that is based on some data and as well as cost considerations. Greg?
So I think Keen, you pointed out too, that everything should be complete coming in. Certainly that's what we'd like to see. 6 months seems like a reasonable point. But if there's something that, for instance, smallest item might have a lot longer lead time, and they may not want to keep coming back and forth to keep getting 6 month extensions. So I'm fine with saying policy directs into a 6 month, auto 6 month, but then having the applicant work with our executive officer to determine what seems fair and reasonable. So they don't just have to keep coming back for 6 months, but they say it's really like a year and a half. Then they come to us, and then we know it's not going to be 6 months. They'll be coming back in a year and a half. So there's some sort of reasonableness to it, and I think that discretion with the executive officer and the applicant might be a way to approach it.
Okay. Sachi?
Definitely agree about having a policy. I'm all for that in general, just, to be consistent as possible. But also with some, maybe we have staff can, with some hindsight, look at what would keep these things from happening in the future. Is it the completeness of the application, or is it that there were other things? Should we advise applicants, hey, it looks like you don't have your ducks in a row yet, you need to come back, or what is some direction to the policy committee there on that? And I agree with with keeping that consistent. And I definitely agree with I want to underline Dennis's comment about cost recovery. So whatever policy should include making sure that the commission is kept whole on that.
Okay. Keen, I think you have the feeling of the commission. I don't know we have to put this in the form of a motion, but there's clear direction here.
So as I heard it, there's clear direction for uniform 6-month extensions for both 4 and 5. And then in the interim, staff will work with the policy committee in developing some policy language that not only addresses expectations from the dais about what is an appropriate amount of time to complete these conditions, perhaps even expanding that to what is a complete application before it gets to the dais, and then cost recovery. And I think based on where we are, that might be a good presentation during the strategic plan in December, January.
Okay. Is that
I was so moved.
okay? Well, we will make it a motion then. And Keen will second it? No, that won't work. Yeah, we have a second?
Second.
Jack, second. All those in favor of the motion, or as the understanding that Keen has iterated here, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any commissioner opposed? Commissioner abstains? So ordered. Okay, that is the item, 14 items under the consent calendar. So I'll move to the business item, the public hearing items. And the first one is the Central Marin wastewater study. And Rachel, you're going to present that.
Thank you, Chair. So this item finally returns from draft form from an extended public review and comment period, in which now the Commission will consider 2 actions. The first is to formally accept and file a final report prepared by staff on Marin LAFCO's established scheduled municipal service review on public wastewater services in Central Marin, and these independently examine as well as make related determinations on the relationship between the demands and capacities relative to the Commission's regional growth management duties. And the second is to approve a resolution to codify these written determinations included in the final report that address the mandatory factors under state law for municipal service reviews. In preparation of the final report, staff received, I believe, around 7 comments on the study during the public review period. Each comment is accompanied by staff response that the Commission may refer to in Appendix B of the final report. There were some technical edits that were made, but the bulk of the report remained intact with no significant impacts to the determinations. Some general conclusions and recommendations of the executive summary that feed into the written determinations I would like to highlight. Number 1 is the study finds that the agencies have a substantive influence on growth in Marin County, with a role in accommodating or inhibiting growth on development in the county. And this is marked by the agency's collective they collectively account for at least 48% of the countywide population, which is at the end of the study term. Number 5, the study finds there's immediate merit to reorganize Murray Park Sewer Maintenance District and San Quentin Village Sewer Maintenance District. These reorganizations would eliminate a dependent special districts governed by the county, and they're operating under an antiquated statute in favor of recognizing Ross Valley Sanitary District as the preferred and more able service provider moving forward. Number 6, the study finds there's additional merit to explore regional consolidation for Ross Valley and San Rafael Creek watersheds. There would definitely need to be further analysis analyzing the merits and demerits of a consolidation or reorganization, as well as assessing, finances, shared costs, and to improve accountability and efficiency. Now, of recommendations, staff would like to note, CMSA should develop a plan to allocate treatment capacities among its member agencies to inform the agency as well as local land use authorities with more certainty and ability to forecast and accommodate future development within their jurisdictional boundary. CMSA should also consider reorganizing its governing board structure to limit or remove City of Larkspur's presence within its JPA, and that would better align vested participation with authority among the member agencies. Affected agencies should also work to identify all septic systems within their boundaries in step with resiliency planning and determining future system and environmental risk. Staff would also like the commission to note that there is a memo attached that should be on your tables that addresses a technical misstep on our end that we did not detect before print, and this was from CMSA in the company report. And staff will address the comments provided by CMSA as we see fit, and we would like to emphasize that the comments made by CMSA did not alter the determinations or the report as a whole, or with any of our recommendations or conclusions. And CMSA agrees with our approach in providing the commission a memo to show their comments. I would like to now turn it back to the chair for any comments from commissioners or questions, as well as any members from the audience with a public hearing.
Well, first I'm going to ask if any commissioners have any questions of Rachel on her presentation before we open the public hearing. Then after we open the public hearing and hear all the testimony from the members of the public, we'll close the hearing and move to take action on this item. So at this time, do any commissioners other than Commissioner McEntee have questions of Rachel? Sashi?
So how do the recommendations we make to other agencies, how do we follow up as a commission on those recommendations?
That is a very good comment or observation, and I would have to leave that up to the commission's discretion on that. Certainly for LAFCO oriented recommendations, that would be easy for us to follow up, but for the member agencies, I don't believe we have a policy.
I have a question, Keen. Normally, do we supply the agencies that we associate with this in this particular study with copies of our final determinations and reports for their use?
Well, yeah, so by way of practice, not policy, but by way of practice, the commission takes action today, adopts this resolution that codifies the recommendations in Rachel's report. What we do is we send a copy of that resolution and a cover letter to each agency saying on such and such date, the commission took this action. And we usually highlight whatever key recommendations or conclusions are specific to that agency. But to Commissioner McEntee's point, and this is a blind spot in LAFCO law, it's just not with Marin. Unlike, and I don't want to ever compare us to a grand jury, but like if you're a grand jury, you issue a report, you gotta follow up with something. Even if you say we respectfully disagree. There's nothing like that in LAFCO law yet. So by way of policy, though, you could certainly direct staff to do follow-up and say, hey, it's been 6 months, staff, what, if anything, have the agencies done? But also, as Rachel noted, the handful of recommendations that are directed at us, well, those are easy. Those are going to be considered and have already been considered as part of your current work plan and in future work plans. But it's the external recommendations.
Okay. Any other questions of Rachel? If not, I'm going to open the public hearing. Members of the audience that would like to speak to the commission on this matter, now is your time to address the commission. Seeing no one, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rodoni and second by Commissioner Baker to close the public hearing. All those in favor signify. Aye. Saying aye, aye. All those opposed?
Okay, Matt, move again.
I'm gonna go over there. I like it over there.
Well, she likes it better over there now. All those opposed, all those, any abstentions?
I got in lots of trouble.
Motion passes. So we are looking at two things, or actually the staff is asking us two things. First, to receive and accept the report, as we're required to do, and to adopt the resolution that was incorporated with this, making our determinations. Any questions or comments commissioners have? Commissioner Rodoni.
Thank you, yeah. The comment is that I fully will endorse and vote for the proposals, but I just wanted to make the comment, those two small sanitary districts, the cost of the customers are substantially different than what Ross Valley charges. But I think when it comes back and that it actually happens, we'll have to figure out a way to ease that transition so they're not all the customers hit at once with the larger or the increased fees. I just wanted to put that on record. It should be something discussed.
Thank you. Any other comments commissioners may have? I think this was a great job. I think a lot of information is there that I learned more about the area that was covered by this. And it seems to me also that there are a number of really meaty action programs suggested here that it seems to me that we ought to consider maybe at the strategic planning retreat. For example, consolidation of some of the smaller facilities. Those kinds of things, the background information that this provides goes stale after a while. So it seems to me, besides doing the municipal service reviews, we ought to also be entertaining a new speaker system. Maybe the technical committee can get together on this one. That, you know, we have some spin-off action programs that we're looking at that take advantage of the work that was done here. So that's something I hope we can bring up and discuss at the strategic planning retreat. Hearing and seeing no other, yes, Commissioner Sullivan.
I wanted to really quickly thank Rachel. I understand that this took over a year. I don't want to know how many hours went into this, but I can tell that there were a lot. I think that this is a really noteworthy project, and it merits nomination for Cal LAFCO's Project of the Year. So I hope we'll be able to make that nomination on your behalf. And then, echoing the sentiments of other commissioners, I hope that this doesn't become basically an intellectual exercise and that there's actually some follow-through on it. This information will certainly grow stale quickly. And so to the extent that, there is civic engagement and involvement with some of these other agencies, we encourage them to diligently pursue these recommendations because they're based in fact. They're based on this report, and I think that now's the time to really try to motivate them to follow through on some of these things, as I'm sure we will as well. So thank you.
Commissioner.
Great, thank you very much. So I'm going to look for a motion that approves the determinations and accepts the document for filing and recommends that we include an application for the study to Cal LAFCO. Motion by Commissioner Conley. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Baker. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye, please. Aye. Commissioner opposed? Any commissioner abstain? Motion passes. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. Woo.
Good. Okay. Keeping in the water domain, in this case, the provision of water, the next item is the North Marin Water District final report, sphere of influence update, and Keene, I believe
This is me. So this is going to be the second and final item relating to your scheduled and required update on the North Marin Water District sphere of influence. You will recall back at the June meeting, staff brought you a draft report on this topic. And after that, we, with the commission's direction, initiated a 45-day public review period and come back to you today with two specific actions that will ultimately satisfy your requirement under state law. And of course, that requirement being beginning now of 2008, every 5 years or so, you need to update each local agency's sphere as you see fit. So, with respect to the report before you, again, it focuses in on North Marin Water District, the entity best known for providing water service to the city of Novato and outlying unincorporated lands in the north part of the county. But then also, and pertinent to our discussion tonight, it operates this small wastewater system out in Dillon Beach. The first of two actions we're asking for the commission tonight is to formally accept and file the written report that your staff has done that addresses all the things that LAFCO is to consider when it does a sphere of influence update by way of state planning law, and that of course includes diving into things such as social and economic communities of interest. What you'll see in the final report is just about identical to what you saw in the draft. And certainly that pertains to all of our recommendations. And just like the draft report, the final focuses in on these three areas that your staff has identified, which you can see on our map. We've identified them as A1, B1, and then B2. Again, these are the three areas that under current LAFCO law and relative to the current sphere designation of North Marin, some merit, albeit different degrees, come up with respect to possible additions. And just jumping right ahead, the end of the day, the conclusion is one immediate change makes sense, and that would be to add all of what we call area A1 into the sphere. That's about 2,300 acres, spanning 11 parcels and associated right-of-way. Commissioner Brown was good to point that out at our last meeting. We had forgotten right-of-way. But nevertheless, these are lands, okay, despite the fact that they're outside the sphere right now, they already receive water service from North Marin Water District by way of these pre-LAFCO outside service agreements. And under this premise, and again, remember the legislature changed the definition of a sphere in 2001 to say a sphere delineates what you believe not only to be their appropriate current and future jurisdictional boundary, but also, and this is where the addition came in, their appropriate current and future service area. So remember, we're dealing with a new definition of sphere since the last time the commission took up this agency's boundaries. And so just on the basis that they have already established a service commitment to these lands, and it's certainly within the commission's interest to support the ongoing viability of these agricultural lands in West Marin. Our recommendation to you today is let's expand the sphere to memorialize this relationship. So that's our one recommendation for an immediate change. The other two areas, B1 and B2, as we talked about in some detail at the last meeting, there are certainly merit to different degrees why you would want to talk about adding these into the sphere. But for similar reasons, there's also some missing information out there. And in coordination with North Marin Water District, the recommendation is let's hit pause. But hit pause with a purpose and make it very clear in the resolution that we've brought you tonight that you're creating policy statements that signal to everyone, in 5 years when by law you come back to this topic, you're going to want to look a little further into the merits of adding the rest of the village in Dillon Beach to North Marin's sphere of influence. And/or you're going to want to talk about expanding the sphere to incorporate or include some of these South Sonoma County properties that already receive water service. So that is essentially the recommendation of the final report, and those recommendations that are then captured in the resolution we brought to you. I do want to point out, we did receive a handful of comments on the draft report before the deadline. Those are incorporated, I believe, as Appendix B of the final, and then you'll see one comment letter that came in. I got it today. It's from the County of Sonoma Planning Department. Essentially, there's no disagreements in any of the comment letters we got. There are different variations of agreeing, let's hold off on B1 and B2, to phrase it differently. So with that, by law, this is a public hearing. We'd happy to answer any questions or clarifications, but we have our 2 recommendations for you to consider.
Okay, before I go to open the public hearing, questions of Commissioners Keen to clarify his presentation. Commissioner Rodoni.
Keen, you did not mention the detachment. I would recommend it as part of this approval.
Yes, so in the report, and thank you, Commissioner, for bringing this up, the emphasis is on changes. However, we do double down in the report and in the resolution by noting all those lands that are already in the district, this commission saw fit back in 1983 to exclude from the sphere. And so we're talking about everything in Marshall, we're talking about everything in North Inverness. We're doubling down on that recommendation and saying these are lands that should, not only should they continue to be excluded from the sphere, but they really need to be detached from North Marin Water District. As we note in the report, how we go about that is a discussion we need to follow up with North Marin, but we're affirming what your brethren said in '83.
And this report in the resolution would lay the groundwork for those discussions with North Marin.
Oh, absolutely. And in fairness to North Marin, we're already having those discussions. And sooner or later, it will happen, I think.
Greg?
So Keen, I read the letter that came in today from Sonoma County, Sonoma Permit and Resource Management Department that they're supporting. It is interesting to see county boundaries where basically a Sonoma County agency is accepting of the sphere of influence. So part of Sonoma is now serviced by Marin. My question is the 2,300 acres, the 2230, and that process, do those, besides the regulatory folks and administrative folks, what's the level of input from local property owners of this process? And they're, I imagine, connecting with neighborhood groups or something like this. What can you kind of walk through this?
So specific with area A1, because that was the only area that we recommended a change. We did send out notices to all landowners and any residents. I think we heard by way of phone call a couple of what is LAFCO type of questions, but no one certainly opposed the idea. And again, working through Drew McIntyre, I think we're all on the same boat with respect to all 3 service areas or study areas. It's the B1 and B2 that, with respect to Sonoma, is somewhat dependent on these ongoing discussions that are separate from LAFCO, but we have an interest in. And I think if you looked at the letter from the city of Petaluma, they do a very good job of outlining exactly what the holdups are historically.
Any other commissioner questions? Commissioner Baker?
Yeah, as Keane explained, this has been evolving for a while. It's come to us before, although we just got sort of the final, cleaned up product a few days ago. And I've been, trying to read it and wanted in particular to talk to Drew McIntyre that Keane just mentioned. He's the new general manager of North Marin. He's been in the district in different capacity for years, but there's a few things here that I'm a little uneasy about, partly the area south of Petaluma. Sphere of influence, yes, no, and wanted to get Drew's thoughts. Unfortunately, yeah, Drew is on vacation this week, and I'm a little more worried about the issue of the small Oceana Marin system out there. It's a very small, meager system trying to fold in Dillon Beach, which has a lot of issues. The concept seems nice, but it may be a little bit over ambitious, I'm thinking. So anyway, I would like to get the commission's indulgence to, even though we're having a hearing tonight, to defer action on this thing. So at least I'll have had a chance to discuss this with Drew McIntyre, our manager.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any commissioner objects to that? It seems reasonable.
Sounds like it makes sense.
Okay, well, we'll proceed with the hearing. So I'll open the public hearing to any members of the audience who would like to address the commission on this matter.
Should be on this here. It's on.
Okay, thank you, just checking. Hi, good evening, Chair Blanchfield, commissioners, staff, and members of the public. My name is Terry Shore. I am the Regional Director for the North Bay for Greenbelt Alliance. I'm based out of Santa Rosa, but I cover Sonoma County, Marin County, and Napa. And I'm very close to the community separators. Last year, Sonoma County ran a ballot measure, supported 81% by the voters of Sonoma County to protect the community separators that are designated in the general plan, including the lands in the area on the map identified as B2. So while I haven't read the full report, and so my comments will be based primarily on the comments from Director Wick, and I would like to support Commissioner Baker's recommendation to delay action on this item. I believe that Director Wick is agreeing with the staff recommendation to hold off on adding that area to the sphere of influence for the reasons that are addressed in the letter. They are protected. There are very strict guidelines related to adding any land, to adding municipal services into the community separators. And the main goal is to prevent increased development and growth. And of course, the Narrows in that area between Novato and Petaluma is a critical community separator. So I would just urge you to be very cognizant of that and to please not consider adding that to the sphere of influence in the future. And I'd like to look more into the whole issue of the water and what the needs are, because maybe there's something that needs to be done. I don't know, you're the experts on that. So thank you very much. One last thing is an ally of mine who has been coming to some of the LAFCO meetings in the past, Rick Savell, had mentioned the term community separators, and that it is or has been in some of the LAFCO policies in the past, and that you may be reconsidering this in the future. And I would love to have the opportunity to talk to the commission and the executive director more about those policies and whether it's appropriate to delve into that more in terms of the LAFCO policies.
Thank you, Ms. Shore. Any questions of Ms. Shore? Any other member of the audience wish to address the commission on this matter this evening? If not,
Are we going to continue the?
I think we should continue the hearing if we're going to continue the action. So we'll continue this matter to our next meeting, and that should be sufficient, Commissioner Baker, for you to,
Sure.
okay.
If I may.
Yes, Commissioner
Chairman,
Downey.
make a couple of comments, because the speaker mentioned a couple of things. It's important to understand the outside water agreements that the North Marin Water District currently have in Sonoma are limited to the historical use of those water meters. So it may source of water. And when I was on the board of North Marin, we've been having discussions with the city of San Pedro for the last 8 years, that I think I remember, about whatever happens there, they should be taking the service over now. Whether that happens or not, and whether everyone's snowing to get behind that, I'm not sure. But I wanted to assure you that the water use is for historical use that was proven when they applied for the outside water agreement, so they cannot be increased. The other comment I wanted to make about the boundaries and growth and things, in the A1 area, I wanted to point out that one of the properties, the ranch land, the Leroy Martinelli property, is in the GGNRA. The family ranch across the road, which is another Martinelli property, currently was added to Malt. Giacomini Ranch is in Malt, and the Dowdy Ranch, Banchini Ranch, will be in Malt by the end of the year. So about 75 to 85% of this land is going to be in Malt. So I don't think there's any threat in terms of acknowledging this outside water agreement.
Thank you, Commissioner Rodoni. Okay, we'll continue this on and now move to item number 17, which is the boundary change proposal on annexation of 571 McClay Road to the Novato Sanitary District.
Thank you, Chair. The commission will consider two related actions tied to a landowner to annex one unincorporated parcel totaling 3.24 acres within the Indian Valley community to the Novato Sanitary District. The first is approving a negative declaration on environmental impacts of potential future development regarding the approval of the proposed annexation, and this is based on an initial study. The second is to consider approving the annexation and assessing the mandatory factors required of the commission to review a proposed boundary change. A little bit of background: affected territory is entirely within Novato Sanitary District's sphere of influence. And this sphere of influence was approved by the commission in 2002, in which the commission expected services to be provided to this area within a viable time period. Now it's up to the commission to consider if this period is appropriate, but overall the purpose of the proposal is to connect public wastewater sewer service to a single-family residence that currently has a failed septic system. The proposal began when the property received a complaint from the County of Marin filed by a neighbor regarding the public health and safety issues caused by this failed septic system. Now, under the county guidelines, the property is within 400 feet of a sewer main, and it is physically and legally possible to connect to such a main. And the county states that no expansion of existing sewage disposal system will be allowed if a property is within 400 feet, and connection to a public sewer will be required. Now, under the mandatory factors, Novato Sanitary District has the service capacity, administrative control, and financial means to provide service to the affected territory. Additionally, this proposal, there's no need for any supplemental amendments or conditions. Although there are no known development plans at this time, if next, the applicant may pursue density or intensity improvements to the property as allowed under the County of Marin zoning. The proposal took an ultra-conservative approach and prepared initial study in step with the potential density and intensity improvements permissible to the property. Now, the proposal appears standard as it covers the basics and examines what if any impacts are generated. However, in getting this item to you today, staff has received comments from the City of Novato as well as Greenbelt Alliance, and the comment from Greenbelt Alliance is an attached memo. And both comments pose concerns that the affected territory lies outside of the City of Novato's urban growth boundary, and as such should not receive wastewater services from North Novato Sanitary District, as it undermines the city's development area. Staff happily go into more detail addressing these comments, and if so, I would like to return the item to the chair and defer to the executive officer to tackle the comments as the commission sees fit.
And just really quickly, so this is a public hearing because of the proposed adoption of the negative declaration. We do have Sean Kennings here today. He prepared the document for our behalf, so he's here in case you had any questions on the CEQA. And then, of course, we do have the applicant's representative in attendance as well. And so I'll turn it back to Chair. And again, as Rachel noted, we'd be happy to go into more detail as you see fit.
Okay, any questions commissioners may have of either Keene or Rachel in their presentations before I open the public hearing? Before I open the public hearing, I want to state that I previously served on the board of Greenbelt Alliance and made contributions to it, and council is advised I have no conflicts but should so state. So I shall open the public hearing at this point.
Good evening again, Terry Short, Greenbelt Alliance. I have a couple of maps that I just wanted to share. I've got one for kind of each side of the room of the Novato urban growth boundary with a little X of approximately where the question, the project in question.
Terry, do you want to pass that around? Is that,
Yeah.
okay.
So Greenbelt Alliance and Marin Conservation League did provide a detailed letter, so I won't read the whole letter, but I would like to hit some of the highlights as to why Greenbelt Alliance and Marin Conservation League are opposed to the annexation at this time and our concerns about the initial study. So the reason that we oppose the annexation is that this property is right on the edge of the urban growth boundary of Novato, and we believe that it undermines the city as well as county growth policies and contributes to creeping sprawl. And we believe this stems primarily from those Marin County policies that require hookups of property within 400 feet of a sewer line. In particular, we support the letter of the Novato City staff, which also just details that the proposed annexation does not meet the urban growth boundary criteria, which you have there. I can read it if you would like clarification on that. It's also outside of the city of Novato's sphere of influence, meaning it's not intended to ever be added to the city. So that's another concern. So it contributes to creeping growth around the edge of the city and the urban growth boundary. So one solution, so a couple of other things. Related to the Novato urban growth boundary, LAFCO did provide a very good comment letter to the City Council of Novato, estimating the number of acres and parcels around the urban growth boundary and within the sphere of influence, totally over 1,000 acres. I mean, over 1,000 parcels. So it's not clear how many of those are hooked up and how many aren't, but that's a lot of parcels. So we'd like to have more information about how many are hooked up, how many could get hooked up, to really fully assess whether this parcel by parcel annexation for failing septic is a big problem or not. We're still trying to assess that. So basically that's our main concern, is that when you add a parcel that's within 400 feet of a sewer, then its neighbor becomes 400 feet within the sewer. So then the next person. So it has a domino effect, a parcel by parcel effect that undermines the Novato UGB as well as LAFCO's policies by creating unintended, unorderly growth. When it comes to the initial study and the environmental review, we believe that it would be, if you're taking a conservative approach, it would also be appropriate to analyze the impacts of the potential development. Because once a sewer is hooked up, the septic limitations go away, and then there is going to be most likely, or at least the possibility of increased development. And what does that mean to the environment and under CEQA and the various impacts? So, just a couple of more things. The city of Novato is renewing its urban growth boundary and did attempt to address some of these issues about annexations outside the UGB in its new policies. That will make it a little bit easier for Novato to extend its permits when these annexations occur in exchange for deed restrictions. So we're okay with that. That will be going on the ballot in November, and we hope LAFCO commissioners and residents of Novato will be able to support that. We do support LAFCO's scheduled Novato Municipal Service Review. We believe that's a really great opportunity to deal and quantify these issues more in detail and to adjust policies if needed. So we do have a number of recommendations that we put in our letter that I'd like to end with, which is 1, please vote no on the annexation of 571 Maclay Road. 2, revise the environmental review and initial study to assess the potential environmental impacts of the maximum build out of the property as would be allowed after the sewer annexation under county zoning before voting on the annexation. So at least ask for more info. Review LAFCO's implementation of county policies related to requirements for sewer hookups. We believe there's a bit more flexibility than maybe is being interpreted. Consult with the County of Marin on interpreting and potentially updating the 2008 sewer regulations to prevent unintended unorderly growth. Support and uphold the City of Novato's urban growth boundary policies. And one thing that we really need is to have LAFCO provide a list of sewer annexations that have been approved by LAFCO around the City of Novato within the date and the location for the past 10 years. We've been asking for this information. I think it's out there, but neither the City of Novato, the county, or LAFCO has been able to provide that information. I think that would be really helpful. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Short. Are there any questions of Ms. Short by the members? Commissioner Baker.
Yeah, just clarification, you talked about the.
Jack, can you wait till she picks her stuff up? Okay.
Yeah, sorry I dropped the agenda.
Yeah, sorry if I started too early. Anyway, you talked about the effect of 400 feet, 400 feet, and so forth. I think there's a difference between a sewer main extension and a lateral, you know, that goes from the main to serve the property. And in this case, I may have misunderstood or misread, I think they're looking at a lateral to get to the main. So the main isn't getting any closer, so that 400 foot that I think I understood you referred to, that concept doesn't really apply.
Well, if that's the case, then maybe more reason to deny the annexation.
Well, and I'll just add a clarification. So, and this is not a decision that has been made, but NSD has made it clear that if LAFCO approves this proposal, they would like to engage the applicant about extending the sewer line to the end of the property. So right now, the map we have on the screen shows where the existing sewer main located. And it's actually located within the property itself.
Keen, is that the green line?
Yeah, the kind of the solid green line. And so,
Where's the street? Where's Maclay Road?
Maclay Road, you do not see. It's nowhere near the road. This is all embedded within private properties. And so what NSD had said they would like to talk to the applicant about, but this is not a final decision, nor is it our decision to make, is by practice, they'd like to have the applicant extend the existing sewer main about 200 feet so it goes to the end of their property line. Again, there's no right-of-way involved here, but just by way of practice, and it makes sense, okay? If you're the district, you want each landowner to proportionally do their fair share in extending the main. But that's not an absolute given here. NSD is responsible to deciding when and if that sewer main gets extended, not LAFCO.
Any other commissioner questions of Ms. Shore before we have somebody else speak? Craig?
Just a general question. So, Keen, the only urban growth boundary in Marin is City of Novato. Is that correct?
To my understanding, yes.
Okay. And in terms of developing the urban growth boundary, I heard you that you said it's basically the city boundary, but, and I agree with you that there needs to be some analysis of the edge properties, and particularly, we're concerned about public health. And if, particularly if there's complaints on failed septic systems, we have an obligation as LAFCO members, not particularly city council members of a particular city or some other representative. The other thing too that's of interest is make sure kind of we're all on the same page. So if we have Novato Sanitary Service, we have City of Novato, and then we have neighbors that are needing services. That's what we have to consider. So I hope Novato, as part of the urban growth boundary process, particularly since it's unique to Marin, looks at those fringe areas and how to cooperate better. And it seems like that it has been neglected in the past, and perhaps LAFCO and other resources can help with that.
Keen, I think it's important to get a picture of what this area is like, which is an area that has been developed in a sense of really rural. It's a horsey community, it used to be, you have 10 acres and a horse, and some people got goats, some people got cattle, and some people have cars they park in the front yard. But it is in an area that has been there for a long time, and it is also subject to the Indian Valley Specific Plan developed by the community and the county subsequent to the urban growth boundary being passed, that has a zoning and land use designated, which is followed for development in that area. So it is adjacent to the city boundary, but it's outside in the county's district.
Sure. Maybe I could offer a couple of comments. I know we have a landowner who would like to also offer up.
Yeah, I guess I'd just say that understanding more how why the city of Novato is opposed to.
I'm in the county of Marin.
Sir, if you could go to
Just
the microwave.
I live in the county of Marin.
Okay, could you address the commission and let us know who you are?
No, I have.
Pardon?
Microphone?
Speaking to the microphone.
Yeah. I just got a letter and that was enough to get me down here. I'm an interested party.
Okay,
My residence is at 563 McClay Road. When I bought it, I was told I could put 4 houses on it by the realtor. And I picked up an advance paper on the way home and found it was set at 1 acre minimum for septic systems. You've got to have enough room to system and a bio system. And so this question's come up often in the time I've lived there. 1972, I built the house myself. I'm a contractor. I put the system in myself, and it's worked ever since. But there comes a different time when, a while back, an engineer wanted to run a sewer all through Indian Valley until they found out most of the sewage is going up instead of down, which makes a problem. So I'm at 563. I don't know which property this is, but I got a feeling I know it. I'll tell you about law. I ran a Christmas tree lot for a long time in Novato, and I made signs exactly like real estate signs, clean and nice and presentable, and I put them out, and the city of Novato told me to get them off. They didn't fit the ordinance. And I let them know that you can't have an ordinance in the United States that bars one guy from doing the same thing that another guy's done. And my sign stayed out. Now, we're very fearful in Novato about a sewer getting through, because before you know it, it looked like Pleasant Valley or any other part of the county. We want it to like it is. But what would probably happen if they encouraged sewers through there? Magically, some guy would pop out the next day and owns half of the land in that town, make it look like any other valley. Swarms of followed it. We wanted to keep it like it is. Next to me and wrapped around me on 3 sides is this Levi Strauss Ranch. I don't know how big it is, well over 100. But that's the jewel of Marin County. And if anyone could get their hands on that little ranch of young Peter Haas, you could just see this sewer line that you're talking about now. It's almost next door to me, that sewer line is. And when you run a sewer line through property like this, even a hint of it, everybody smells it, the developers smell it. Once you have a service in any country, any part of the country, you can't stop people using it. There's no way. If there's a sewer put through the country, they can get used to it. It's public affair. Or water, or electricity, or television lines. So it's this thing here that we're talking about now is a thin end of a wedge that's going to bust that wild Indian Valley to pieces. Because like anything else, when I put my signs out, they couldn't stop mine being shown alongside the others. And when they put a sewer into a place that's adequate, for me, for one, I'm 300 feet away from this sewer hookup. You can't stop people from using it. It's legal, it's law. In America, you can't stop people developing the land if the services are there to be used adequately. So this is the thin end of the wedge, and it's not a good thing. I'm surprised there aren't more people from Nevada here tonight. What they do is let someone else do the dirty work, and I'm doing it now. And my name is Frank McGowan. I'm a general contractor builder, and I love to put 4 houses on where my house is. I pull that one down and put 4 more in the place next week if this sewer's approved, which I don't think it will or should be.
Thank you. Is Mr. McGowan? Is that right?
Like George.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is anybody else here in the audience that would like to speak? Yes. And if you would state your name and city, that would be appreciated.
I'm Susan Stump. I am here for the Marine Conservation League, but I live in Novato and have lived in Novato for 47 years now. We being the Marine Conservation League, was a co-signer of the letter that was sent in by Greenbelt Alliance. Our logo's on the top and whatnot. So we agree with the things that Terry mentioned earlier. One of the issues we've had, and I belong to a number of organizations, about the change in the county policy, which I think happened about 2008, that provided for requiring a hookup to a sewer if it was within 400 feet of a property that wanted to be developed or had a failing septic. And the impacts of that have been negative for these other organizations too, in that, well, one of the organizations is Rin Balin's Advocates. We buy property in Baland areas, wet areas with marshes and streams, etc., and preserve it for its natural assets. And a parcel that we were looking at off Olive Road, where we have a number of other parcels, on the south side of Olive Road, there's one on the north side of Olive Road, that we were negotiating to buy. And this regulation came in where this developer, who is limited to 3 units on that property because it just didn't perk, was now thinking in much grander terms, and the price of the property went up consequently and made it unable for us to acquire it and preserve it. That is one effect of this policy that's relatively new. And as LAFCO seems to be addressing these issues, at least in the Novato area, they don't seem to look at, well, what are other ways of addressing a failed septic or somebody who wants to build a new house on a property that would require a sewer pre-2008, but now requires hooking up to a sewer line. The urban growth boundary, I was party to the election in 1997 when Novato first adopted their urban growth boundary. And there were not many problems with annexations outside the urban growth boundary at that time, but there are more and more problems developing now because there is a conflict. And I think we need to have more discussions with the sanitary district and LAFCO and the city of Novato to come to some kind of an agreement about when it is appropriate to require the hookup to a sewer if you have a failing septic or you want to build on a property that's outside Novato's urban growth boundary. The urban growth boundary was passed in 1997 by a 74% vote of the people of the city of Novato. It's on the ballot for renewal for another 25 years this November, and we're anticipating strong support for it this fall. So this could be an ongoing issue. And as Terry mentioned, you know, identifying those areas that have the potential for conflicts between the city of Novato and LAFCO and the county of Marin, I think is really necessary and even urgent now that it's coming up again, and you're going to be doing your service area review. So it seems like a perfect time to be looking at this, and we would encourage that there be more discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Small. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm John Margowski, and I represent the property owner. And like Keene indicated, and Rachel, that back in February, our septic system failed. And at that time, environmental health came out, gave us a notice of violation, indicated we would need to hook up to the sewer. We applied for an emergency variance, but the tenant at the property moved out. It no longer was an emergency, so it's been 6 months, the house is empty. It's never a good thing to have a house empty for that long of a period of time. The property owners have no plans of dividing it. It's possible to divide it, like folks said, into 3, but they have no ambitions to do that. And the lateral issue too, Novato San is telling us to, extend the main 200 feet and then extend the lateral 200 feet. So if that's really a concern, I mean, if you condition me to do a lateral instead of, the main and the lateral, then I would think that at least the hopscotch growth thing that you're talking about would be amended for this property, not other properties. So I think that's, and I would think connecting to a sewer, if there wasn't these growth issues, is a good thing. I mean, I hear the gentleman here that there's a low groundwater or high groundwater, and so with septic systems, sewers are better, and we're whatever 300, 400 feet from the sewer, so I think it's better for the environment too. So anyway, if you have any questions, please let me know.
Yeah, I guess I do, because I now have located the city of Nevada's letter, where it looks like on the critical issue of public health, they disagree that there are no other feasible ways of addressing the issue of the failed septic system. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
No, I think there's probably always a way to fix the septic system, but what our engineer indicated was that with this high groundwater, that it's difficult to overcome. So you'd have to build up some kind of large mound and build it that way.
Just a quick question, a follow-up. I believe in the environmental health letter, it stated that you could go to a pumping system and still use the residence and use the facility. And it sounds like because of a vacancy, you've chosen not to take that.
Well,
I
that's
just wanted to
another,
point that out.
when I read it, I took it as that you'd always have to continuously pump it out when it got full.
Yeah, you have to pump your tank out, yeah.
It's just not something that's as good as a sewer system or a septic system.
It's something that's not uncommon if you only have a septic system choice.
Commissioner Baker?
Yeah, just a follow-up. With the mound system, dealt a little bit with them in the distant past, and they're kind of iffy. Some work, some don't. There's some work for a while, and they stop working. And I have talked more recently to a couple of people that have reviewed those. One person firm designed for years, and he said it was an absolute last resort. They're true. Even if initially they look on a paper, you build it according to all the specifications, they're a much higher risk of failure. And he said he wouldn't, if anybody had a chance of connecting to a public sewer versus putting in a mound, and those are not inexpensive either. If you can spend 40, 50, 60,000, and then find out that year or the next year it wasn't working properly. So it's not a really good alternative either.
Correct. And our engineer CSW echoed what you just said.
But I just think other people should know that it's not just a easy option or without risks.
How much discretion is there in this county ordinance of 400 feet? I mean, we came across this at 255 Margarita in the Country Club in Center Bell. I think that applicant would just assume, never mind, it's a separate application. But, I mean, is there latitude to that, 400?
From the county's eyes, no. They say as long as it's legally permissible, you shall connect. Now, what is legally permissible? If this commission were to say no to this applicant, maybe there's an argument that it's no longer legally permissible. We've never gone down this path. It's not as if this is the first time we've processed a proposal right outside the UGB to Novato Sanitary District. We've done 2 in just the time I've been here at LAFCO for the three years. So we've never gotten this type of feedback from Novato to this extent. So we haven't even explored what would the county do if we said no. I know they wouldn't be happy. Environmental health would not be happy if we said no.
Isn't this part of the county code? As I read it, the county code is. And so, it's county's jurisdiction. County has the land use plan, which we're supposed to follow. County has a code that we followed in Indian Valley beforehand, hooking up failed septic tanks to sewers from an environmental standpoint. So it's important to have a little background on it.
If I could add just some background. So in the map that is on, it's located here, but then let's see here. It might be easier for the commission due to pixelization on page 605 of your agenda packet. You see this very map. And in the corner, there's this insert of the greater Indian Valley area. And the yellow is highlighted by John's client's property. You can see this outline of a red line that extends far out into the unincorporated area. That's what this commission designated as Novato Sanitary District sphere of influence. By doing that, this commission has signaled anytime, you've already, or at least your predecessors have made the policy determination that when the timing is right, and Rachel mentioned this, you've already signaled that you prefer to see public wastewater services in this area. So the applicant has processed a proposal consistent with your policies. Staff has provided you a recommendation to approve based on this policy decision you've already made with respect to the sphere, coupled with Rachel attesting all of those 15 or 16 factors the legislature says you have to consider in looking at a specific boundary change. Well, we can attest they all check out. So from our perspective, this proposal is wholly consistent with LAFCO policies. And this comment was made earlier, and it's a correct one. I think Terry had made it. This property is outside the Novato sphere of influence. And it was done so at the request, as the record suggests, by Novato. Well, a couple of key conclusions are reached from there. One is this this commission has now designated the county as the appropriate land use authority for this area because it's not in any city sphere of influence. And when we open up the Indian Valley Specific Plan under policy 3.31, it says public sewer services are advisable to accommodate zoning as contemplated in this document. So not only are we consistent with LAFCO policies here, we're consistent with the county's policies, not only with respect to this 400-foot rule, but just the Indian specific plan itself.
Sashi?
Keen is,
Maybe I'll hold the button.
okay, that's the word.
Either.
You just gotta talk loud.
Okay, Keen.
Quickly.
Is there is there a concept of an island in terms of outside of cities? Because this looks pretty close to an island.
So the concept certainly holds. It doesn't have the same, you don't get to leverage the waiving of protest proceedings like you do with city islands. But yeah, so I think it's number 6. Of those 15 factors in Appendix A, it asks you, does this eliminate and or otherwise affect a corridor and or any other irregularity in a agency's boundary? Just the eye test alone says, it would be a lot cleaner if this was in the district than outside.
Okay, so yeah, so I guess that's what I wanted to there. So on the public health front, because it's not occupied anymore, so it's no longer an emergency. Is that what I heard? But if, in order for it to be occupied ever again, it would then become an emergency again.
So now this gets into the nuances of LAFCO law. So when John first approached us, it was, I think, initially inhabited, and under LAFCO law, public health and safety finding is premised on existing residents. When those residents moved out of the property, we couldn't make that finding anymore. So we transitioned from an outside service agreement approach just to get sewer to this property to this more deliberate annexation process. Also, Novato has defined a public health threat for their own purposes, which is certainly in their purview. But LAFCO has its own discretion deciding what is a public health and safety threat. And certainly, as Chair Blanchfield has noted, we've relied on environmental health for the most part in deciding when that threshold is met.
I've got a quick follow-up. It was noted that there will be a proposed renewal of the urban growth boundary for Novato coming up on the ballot. And the suggestion has been made that that is a relevant factor to our consideration here. If you could elaborate on that more, what's the interrelationship there?
I don't think staff suggested, the renewal in of itself is pertinent to this particular proposal. I don't think policy issues for the commission change because unless you move back your sphere of influence for Novato's sanitary district to no longer include this property, our main policy and the specific plan for Indian Valley doesn't change. Those are the two driving forces here for staff. I think maybe Terry Shore was emphasizing the urban growth boundary renewal as a community signal of wanting LAFCO perhaps to honor its external activity.
That could potentially have some significance. Maybe my colleague, you have a comment on that?
Well, I actually was going to comment on that, and first Dasha's comment, it actually is a county enforcement on this, code enforcement, that it's a failed system, and they say within 10 days of February that they should have corrected. So I think that applies no matter what we decide. It is under enforcement for being corrected, and I don't think we should ignore that. But I wanted to go back and, not related to this project, but give a little bit of the history. I happened to be on the commission when the urban growth boundary and the sphere of the city of Novato coincided with each other. And that was a decision that this commission made And it wasn't an easy decision because some members of the commission wanted to have the sphere as large as they saw Novato eventually ever being. And some of us on the commission argued, I think including the chair, that no, it didn't make sense to get bigger than the urban growth boundary because it was a 20-plus year commitment. In that discussion, and I discovered this with Keene today, we neglected to look at the sanitary district sphere and how it related to the Novato city sphere, and didn't realize that they two didn't line up very well. And so, especially a parcel like this that's very close and is really almost an island, if we were paying attention in 2008, we probably would have tried to adjust the sphere a little bit to make it just make sense. One or the other, either the sanitary sphere or the city sphere. But we were so focused on the political issues around whether it should be the urban growth boundary or the envisioned supervisor at that time's future look on Novato. And it was a 4-3 vote, I remember specifically.
It was close, but you also have to remember the sphere of the city of Novato went out almost to Stafford Lake.
That's correct.
And this was a big rollback to where you found the first development. I mean, the development in this area, the Indian Valley area, is about the same that's in Novato on the other side, except Novato is a little bit more dense. And so I think the thinking was, well, this is already settled. There are homes already here, a number of them. We know that septic tanks that have been in here for 50, 60 years are probably going to fail. Does it make sense now to plan ahead to put sewer systems in, which the county said, you got to do this. This is our policy. You, LAFCO, need to carry this out in county jurisdiction. And we agreed. And we've done that in Indian Valley beforehand. But it's an environmental issue in the county's jurisdiction. This is not Novato's jurisdiction.
I think my point is that we just didn't recognize the conflict at the time.
Yeah. And it's important, I think your point is also important that we do that going forth. Commissioner Condon.
Thank you. I have a question. If we were to support putting in and connecting to the sewer, can't there be some sort of a policy like what's already in place where the zoning quantities are restricted so that it might be one house to an acre or one house to 10 acres, where we're not going to see a large development on these properties, and whatever's agricultural remains agricultural, but just that there is still the ability for the existing homes to be able to connect to the sewer, but still maintain the concept of the urban growth boundaries.
Well, right now, under the Indian Valley Plan and in the zoning that goes with it, it's a maximum lot size, minimum lot size of 1 acre. And with other caveats found in that might increase it. So, you know, crossing from Novato into this area, it's hard to tell when you're in Novato when you're not. It's just that the road gets smaller when you go into Indian Valley. And it's very clear in our past meeting, and that's exactly the way the people want it kept. They don't want to be part of it. Yeah.
And this is short of a zoning change. This is one on an agreement between property owner and those that oppose this application. The property owner has expressed this evening that they have no plan to subdivide the land. And maybe they will just agree to not do that for a period of time in exchange for this hookup. I don't think anyone's really worried about the hookup. The hookup makes a whole lot of sense, especially if the system has failed. What people are opposed to is the potential of development.
Yeah, so
An
that's
agreement,
what I
a deal between.
Yeah. So I was thinking just if you enforce the current zoning or even make it more stringent than it is, that it would leave the opportunity for people to connect to the sewer if they wanted to, but at the same time, it wouldn't be a catalyst for future growth.
Can I ask, can we do that? Can we make restrictions on the zoning? Wasn't that purview of the county?
So thank you. So you cannot, under state law, apply conditions that directly regulate land use or property rights. So that's just not on the table. Now, what you can do, and maybe this is where Commissioner Condon, you were going, making it explicit that you can condition services to be consistent with zoning as they are known today. You can do that, but I don't know from what I've heard that mitigates the concern of Novato in the sense that they seem concerned about the idea that there could be 3 residential lots here in the future. Well, as Chair Blanchfield noted, that discussion occurred in 2003, and now through the specific plan of Indian Valley, and staff has evaluated the proposal based on that, and our sphere of influence reflects that.
Well, so isn't the decision about that, so the decision of that zoning would either be, appealing to the county and causing the county to make that restriction, or appealing to the city of Novato to annex the parcel and then put a restriction on the zoning, right? I mean, I don't see where we fall into this at all, as far as the density. I understand the concern about, well, this or that, but I think it's going with what you said, Chair Blanchard, that this is county jurisdiction, a county law, and that's kind of it in the city of Nevada.
We're supposed to carry out what the county is zoned and planned for. Now, if it was in Nevada, I mean, the important thing, it's not Nevada.
It's not.
It's not Nevada.
It certainly could be.
And essentially, Nevada is telling the county, this is how you should have planned your land.
But I think the public speaker expressed a concern that if you make this infrastructure improvement, does it open the door to further development by definition of having the infrastructure in place?
So then,
It would, consistent with how the county has planned the land, which is basically a rural area.
Well,
Could
so-
that
so
zoning
let's say-
change? Yes.
So let's say that there's a sewer ring there, and then somebody else comes along who's 400 feet from that and wants to develop that. That would be under county zoning, under this Indian Valley specific plan, which currently is a minimum of 1 acre parcel. So it sounds like if there's a concern there, then the concern should go to the county to talk about changing the Indian Valley specific plan to have a less dense zoning. I mean, that's just, that's another remedy.
Yeah, it seems to me this is kind of off from what we're talking about with somebody who wants to hook up to a sewer is.
Right.
There are real issues at the urban-rural fringe.
Yes.
And the cities have said, gee, we could put in these urban growth boundaries, but it doesn't matter if just across the street it's the county zoning, and the county said, we have a totally different idea what ought to happen here. So there's really a need, it seems to me, through the process of something like a specific plan, to identify the area at issue, have the county, the city, LAFCO, the affected homeowners get together and say, what should happen in this area? And at the end of this area, how do we make sure that that's the end? But it takes a conversation amongst a number of agencies. And in the fact that the Indian Valley specific plan was updated, 10 years ago, that was a good opportunity, but apparently those discussions didn't take place.
Well, maybe that happens during the MSR, but, we're kind of where we are now.
Jeff, I think, really focus on public health. Talking about plans and designs and limitations, the urban growth boundary that Novato, for some reason, kind of shortcutted themselves and not including this in the sphere of influence, which now they're saying, hey, we really want influence. And now it's like you either have it or you don't. Do you want sphere events? No, don't or not. So, you know, that's already sailed, but it's coming up. So that there's a lot of work that City of Novato needs to do to really work on these areas. Right now, it's county jurisdiction. There's a health issue with this owner. LAFCO is obligated under the policy to do this, but a concern for those speakers may be the dual annexation policy. And then also the thing to remember is these fringe areas, they're developed already. The very first point one of the speakers had mentioned was about this sprawl. And of course, that's one of the things that LAFCO were in charge of here for Marin County. But again, these are developed areas with health issues. And as the owner rep indicated, they're not bringing forward as an applicant, but they're driven by county health. So we are obligated as a board to respond to that health issue. But I think with all the discussion tonight, there's some really issues with urban growth boundary and limitations and things that you're kind of self-realizing that, hey, a lot more work needs to happen on it to make sure all the different entities, county health, LAFCO, specific plans with the county, other folks doing regulations of these properties, as well as things maybe LAFCO look at is when an applicant brings forward a situation where they have to connect, maybe look at a feasibility study. Have they looked at some of the other methods of conveying their waste, and what's the most effective thing in terms of meeting that county health department obligation? So that could be something in our camp with the LAFCO camp that we request an applicant to do a little more thorough research that might be common ground.
You know, the public hearing is still open, and I should ask if anybody else in the...
Jeff, one more
yes,
thing too.
sure.
One of the new things that LAFCO looked at is watersheds and areas within a watershed. And you know, the groundwater recharge is an issue with the septic systems, and that might be something to take a look at as well in terms of spheres of influence and cooperation between various governmental entities on these issues of urban fringes.
Does anybody else in the public wish to address the commission on this item before I entertain a motion to close the hearing?
Move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rodoni, second by Commissioner Baker to close the public hearing. All those commissioners in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any commissioner opposed? Any commissioner abstain? Motion passes. So we are asked to do two things tonight. Consider and take action on the environmental report. And second, if that is approved, to approve the application as the commission may determine. Commissioner Rodoni.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, I commented earlier on the history, I wanted to comment on the project specifically, because LAFCO is applying two different processes to this parcel. The first process is the failed septic system and the requirements by the county. And so what I asked Keynes earlier today was, can we address just that? And his reaction was, no, there's a second part, that we have some obligation about growth and providing for future growth, which is, I think, Jeff's comment that there's growth figured in this area by zoning, and it's our responsibility to plan for future growth. But the difference between the two with me is it really comes down to whether it's the main extended, because to me, that's essentially more growth inducing, because you reduce the cost of extending the main beyond this property, potentially, versus a lateral which addresses your health issue, because that allows this property to hook up like 400 feet or whatever it is, less than 400 feet, into the main existing main. So the question I'm raising is, are we doing our job at LAFCO if we pick and choose? And I don't know the answer. I think King would say, no, we're not, if we don't address both. But for example, in the first thing, you could also talk about, well, if it's one house and one current property, you could actually just tell them about standing, we'll give them one equivalent dwelling unit. And that's another way to restrict your approval. But getting into areas that I know Keene is not comfortable with, but I just wanted to point out, there's some conflicts just within our own rules. And I have a personal problem with, actually with the county saying, because if this didn't have a septic system, sewer system nearby, they would find a solution for this. They would have to. So for them to blanketly say your only option is the sewer system, I think that's short-sighted, especially when we look at the size of some of these properties that we're dealing with. Now it may be that that will never change, I don't know, but I think it's also a little short-sighted. And I think my point is that in LAFCO regulation, we have some things that don't fit together really well sometimes, and this isn't probably the time to address either one of those, but it's just something to think about.
Well, it's hard not being able to step in and be the land use planning agency when we put ourselves in that position. And I think that's one of the difficulties that LAFCO faces, having an effect on regional land use management. To what extent? But you know, we may or may not, by saying, well, we're going to approve a main here because a main has this land use ramification, versus we're going to put a lateral here which has this ramification. Are we stepping outside our authority as granted by the legislature? I would feel more comfortable if we could authorize a lateral to solve the environmental problem. On the other hand, there is a community there that has spent time on doing a specific plan that said, this is what we envision our community being. It would have additional homes. Not many, but there would be additional ones. And to do that, you're going to need a sewer main. It's a difficult balance. Yes, Commissioner Stone.
I'd like to make a comment about one of actually the earlier items with our central Marin wastewater summary. And one of the recommendations that was actually highlighted by staff was number 9, that we are recommending that these agencies, I think this overlaps here, investigate and almost document the septic systems that are within either their sphere or service area, and that these are issues that we want to proactively see addressed. That was 2 items ago, and it's for a very important and good reason that it goes directly to the health and safety, that failed septic is a serious issue countywide. So we want to see this resolved, and I understand the health impacts, and I recommend that we approve this project based on everything in the staff report, but also the general policies that we've been consistently applying.
Okay. Well, does any commissioner want to make a motion first on the environmental document?
Do we need to close the public hearing first? Or
We do.
We did.
I think we
Okay.
did.
Okay.
I thought we did, yeah.
For the record. Thank you.
Chronic alcoholic. I install my own septic system.
Sorry, the public hearing is closed. I'm
I
sorry.
can help this month, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve the environmental, the initial study?
The negative
The
declaration.
yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner McEntee, second by Commissioner Baker to approve the environmental negative declaration. All those commissioners in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any commissioner opposed?
No.
Commissioner Doney votes no. Any commissioner abstaining? No commissioners abstaining. Motion passes. Okay, next motion.
I'll move alternative action 1, approve adopting the intent to catch draft resolution, etc.
Okay, which would approve the proposed project.
Okay.
Motion by Commissioner Baker, second by Commissioner All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any commissioner opposed?
No.
I'll
Commissioner?
I'll join in that.
Commissioners Rodoni and Donnelly opposed.
Yeah, and I'll do no.
Huh? I'm sorry. Commissioner Conley?
No,
No.
No, I think
And
that's
any
four.
commissioner abstaining? No commissioner abstaining. And your vote is? I can't count.
Oh, it's 4-3, with
4-3,
Commissioners Rodani, Connolly, and Condon voting no.
Yes. Okay, motion passes.
Can I
Next.
just make just a quick comment on that?
Of course.
Thank you. I would just encourage Ms. Stomp and everyone else that has a personal interest in this, whether it's personal or for an organization or agency that you're working with, that you continue to be real proactive on seeing that the zoning isn't changed and that you don't get an up density in that area.
Well, I go also another step. I really do believe if there is a true feeling that solutions want to be made, that the city and other parties involved need to start doing some work. And they need to understand how things change out there. And they need to get together a specific or area plan. Under California planning law, an area plan is a way that jurisdictions can get their thought together and get a common set of policies in land use designations that solves the problem for all of them. That has not happened in this area. This area is a ripe area for it, and I think both the Marine Conservation League and Greenbelt would do themselves a great justice to take leadership in that area. Something could actually happen. And it isn't just going to be in Indian Valley. It's going to be all around the bottom. And it's going to be all around the other cities in Marin County. Okay.
And Mr. Chair, I think that LAFCO could take the lead and do this job too. It starts with the spirit we'll be working on very soon and maybe start talking, because some level of my discomfort is with it. We can't agree with what the city wants. And I think it's because we just don't have enough conversations with them about these things early enough. We always end up with a project, with a problem that we haven't talked about. I think now that we recognize this problem, we should start that discussion before we get into this peer review.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you look at the MSR as a initiation into discussions. And I think, yes, and it is coming up soon. But it needs to have the support of those who approve budgets for people that would be involved in that study. Having done this a lot in my life, I know how much it takes, and it takes a lot. And it takes commitment, good commitment from people to do it. Thank you. Now, final proposal to re-adopt the study schedule.
Real quick on my end, so you'll recall the commission received a draft proposal from its policy committee on how to go about readopting your obligation or state law to be in the business of preparing municipal service reviews every 5 years. You liked that draft so much, you didn't make any changes. You said go out and circulate it among our 65 public agencies. We did just exactly that. In the process, we generated 2 comments, which are included as attachments to your agenda report. Santerfell and Marinwood both said, hey, we're okay with it, which means something because they happen to be the first 2 agencies up in the queue in terms of the proposed study schedule. So, given all this affirmation, we've made no changes. So everything that we talked about in June applies today. That means essentially what the commission is doing is you're hitting restart and you're going to follow up or start this next schedule exactly where we have left off progress-wise in the current schedule. That means an emphasis on East County. That means an emphasis on regional studies as opposed to individual reviews. And then ultimately, we're going to gear down a bit to kind of reflect the reality of your resources and the way you want to do these studies. So unlike the initial schedule where we did 3 to 4 studies a year, wildly optimistic on that, we're just going to do 2 studies a year, and we're going to cover 70% of all the agencies over the next 5 years. And the idea is, come 2022, you'll tackle the remaining 30% as you see fit. So again, no changes, but this is for formal approval.
Okay, before we open it for public questions or comments, does anybody have any questions for Keith? Okay. This is our last public member leaving.
I'll move for a
Okay. Oh, thank you. Danny's made a motion and Sashi has seconded it. And this is to accept the final proposal to re-adopt the study schedule. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that passes. And we will move right along to the subject of the financial audit.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So perhaps even a quicker item, this might have been consent worthy, but 2 reasons why we put it on the business calendar. One is we always like to reflect when we get a clean bill of health from an outside auditor, and that's exactly what we got here. At the end of the day, no errors or omissions in our reporting system, so that's always good news. And then I wanted to take this opportunity to really compliment your contract bookkeeper, Elisa Schiffman, with Southern Marin Fire Protection District. Elisa did all of the interfacing on your staff's part with our auditor, while also implementing this brand new accounting system for Marin LAFCO. So kudos to her for really coming in and helping us out. And again, given this is our first year of trying to extract documentation for 15-16 out of a brand new QuickBooks system, and the fact that there's no errors or omissions, credit to her for doing what we've paid her to do, which is get you a solid system. So again, for you to formally receive and file, no action per se unless you had any questions.
Yes, Craig.
So Kim, being on the finance subcommittee,
Yeah.
I appreciate the effort, particularly with all the moving items you have to deal with. So I do think the staff person from Southern Marin Fire helped the district in this kind of transitional period. So the 2 recommendations to further improve the accounting practices and kind of bringing that in-house, how are you seeing that we will achieve that?
Yeah, so while I said there was a clean bill of health, it didn't mean that there wasn't ways to perfect the system. And so the 2 perfections, as I like to phrase them, is one, the auditor noted that our policies, or we needed to adopt policies that better reflect our accounting system. Well, that's true. We did just this time last year adopt a comprehensive set of accounting policies, but of course they're predicated on being with the County of Marin. So we do have to just kind of now update our policies to reflect we're on QuickBooks and we're doing all of this on our own. The second issue that they flagged was doing a better job in more timely reconciling our payroll taxes on these quarterly issuance that we have to provide the state. Point well taken. There's a reason why it's not necessarily timely, because we're still relying on the county to do our payroll. So there's an interface challenge that we think this year we'll be able to finally smooth out. So both recommendations I think we'll address this time next year.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, then can I ask for a motion to?
Public comment?
Yeah. Yeah, do you want more comments?
No, public
Oh,
comment.
no, or non-public.
I'll move
You don't
to
call for it,
Yes.
anyway?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, that passes. And then moving right along, this is for the approval of the new
Correct. So this is a twofer coming from you by way of the policy committee that would both establish a brand new job classification in the world of Marin LAFCO, and then also make amendments to an existing position we have at Marin LAFCO. And both of these changes are born out of your adopted work plan that say, among other things, policy committee, take a look at our organization and offer up some recommendations on how to make things a little more efficient day to day. And certainly the inference there is true. I'm sure the commission has noticed over the last year plus our ability to get agendas out in a timely manner. A lot of things have been weighed down a bit as we've been struggling trying to keep staff resources up with our workload. And so the question that was posed to the committee and their response therein is creating a brand new job at LAFCO titled Assistant Policy Analyst. And it would be a hybrid, okay? It would be a position that, for the most part, would be focused in on performing entry to mid-level analysis work, specifically in support of our municipal service review program, but also explicitly contemplate that as the need comes up, that this person would help us on some more clerical items, like making sure all our filings are done on time and things of this. With that in mind, if you take a look at attachment A, the policy committee has come up with, I think, a pretty standardized set of job descriptions that contemplate this hybrid role. We've also come up with what we think is an appropriate salary range that I think tops off at $70,000 or so. I will note, just in further reflection, and I know that the committee members had wanted me to think about this a little more, you'll see in the attachment A or attachment 1 that we perhaps overprescribe and say something to the effect that this position is full-time between 32 and 40 hours. I think in hindsight, we could just say full-time and not try to overprescribe that part. So that's the one change I'd read into the record.
Especially given that full-time is 40 hours at least.
That was a good point, and I'll blame the committee for not catching that earlier. Now, if you keep going to attachment 2, you'll see some related changes that we're going to be proposing for the administrative analyst position, something that is aptly held down by Rachel Jones right now. And we're just trying to basically firm up that position relative to existing and expected duties. And that includes, of course, a name change to better reflect now organizational flow. So we'd call the position policy analyst going forward. And then also just make explicit what has been, I think, the practice in which this position does provide oversight, help to those lower staff, in particular commission clerk and now the assistant policy analyst. So I think these are all conforming changes that meet expectations. And the idea here is, under both job classifications you have, the key here is to make sure everyone's working within their class. So I'll defer to the policy committee if they wanted to add anything, but we are recommending that not only that you approve it, that it go into effect immediately, and among other things, that will greenlight staff to go ahead and start the recruitment for the assistant policy analysts. Yeah, these speaker systems need to be checked. This is tough. I'm hearing an echo of me constantly.
Now, all the little red lights are an incredible distraction too. Little fireflies.
Well, okay, so this actually isn't a resolution, you're just looking for approval.
Just approval by motion.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the creation of the assistant policy analyst and the amendments to the administrative analyst position? Motion by Commissioner Baker, followed by a second from
Me.
Commissioner Dunn. Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any commissioner opposed? Any commissioner abstaining? The motion passes. And we move quickly.
Hey, Chair, if we could just get 3 minutes of a break so we can pass out some items.
Okay.
And no worries, we have to be out of here by 10 o'clock. Our security guard leaves, so this is coming to an end soon.
So, I have a motion to approve the, what, policies on use and
Yeah.
care and feeding of the iPads.
And feed, thank you.
I'll
Yeah.
move it.
Okay, great. Commissioner Murray and anybody else from the tech community, I'm sure. Commissioner Baker, are you seconding this one too? Thank you. Motion to, whatever it was, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
And are you gonna, I would suggest that you get a case for your iPad. They don't
Yes,
use
that's a good idea.
Have them kind of loose, that you'll immediately scratch them if they get you don't take it.
Well, I think that's a great idea. So now, how do we do that?
We will get, as part of our individual follow-ups, we will talk to you about outfitting you with a LAFCO logodized
Oh, there you go.
Branding.
There you go.
Thank you.
Believe it. We haven't adjourned yet, guys.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Well, on the agenda, there's an EO report.
Nothing to add on.
Keen, in here somewhere is a mention of the Cal LAFCO conference. And those who thought they wanted to go and thought they wanted to be put up for one of the officers of Cal LAFCO, they should contact you, and then you can contact me if anybody does something, and then we can just set it up. But I think you have
Very good. So by August 25th, I think it's the deadline.
Yeah.
A city or I think public members interested in running for Cal LAFCO, let me know, I'll let you know, and then also the Achievement Awards. And I believe as part of your motion earlier, we've already have a Project of the Year candidate.
That's
Thank
right,
you.
that's right. Also, I abstained from the, and I didn't realize that I did, but I abstained from the vote on the minutes because I wasn't here. And any commissioner announcements?
I have
Sashi?
a comment. I would like us to see, we meet every 2 months. I'd like us to see, get the packet with a little more time to review. But I spoke to Keen about this. I just want to put this up for a future discussion. You know, if maybe staff could look at a policy of getting the inputs to the packet a little bit earlier so that they could get the packet out to us earlier. And of course, the package should be available to the public at the same time as it's available to us. You know, anything that comes in late can always be added to the Dropbox or in other ways gotten to us. So I just would like to bring that back for a later discussion.
Yeah, and along those lines, we might think, particularly if we have more meetings like this, of having a meeting once a month like we used to kind of break up longer meetings in the amount of material that you have to read.
So with that, so that's an item for future discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one other one is, we're all hyped up about our new technology, and there are people out there that come to our meetings that don't know how to turn these things on. So I think we need to still have paper documents for folks that work better than that.
Oh, just to have an office copy that's available for the public?
Well, an office copy, and if any commissioner says, gee, thanks very much, but you know, I really, to do my job, I need a paper copy.
Some of us are late bloomers.
Well,
As
you
you can
know,
see.
yeah. And anybody coming in the office, we're supposed to provide materials for everyone who can read it. And I think we get caught up in technology too much.
And then just, so we brought up 2 possible policy things during this meeting, and I just wanted to make sure that it was captured. We talked about doing some policy around time extensions and around following up with agencies regarding recommendations that show up in MSR. So I just wanted to flag those for future discussion.
All right. The magic motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Any second? Second, Mr. Baker, thank you. We're adjourned.